I don't want to keep rehashing it, but I don't think this council can even select who's going to be interviewed without prejudice and bias.
Councilmember DePriest.
Yeah, I will. I guess I'll go into that segment of my statement here. See if I can kind of break this up so I can finish it when we get to number 3 and 4. Again, I'm concerned that if a council member is an applicant and therefore cannot vote, and because I feel the process is so tainted that I would then not be able to vote, that we do need, and I'm just going to speak to this issue here, an independent body to determine who would be interviewed. Again, I from the emails that I have, they indicate to me that there is an issue that's beyond the ability to put personal feelings aside, and it so taints it that I feel it's necessary to come up with some form of a committee to review, an independent, unbiased, impartial, however you want to put it, committee to review the applications and select the candidates for interview. So I would go if number 3 if you want to put it in categories here.
We as elected officials, and we've all been elected by the public, we're entrusted with candidates based on what we believe our constituents want. I think it would be a how to put the words, it's anti-democratic that we would not be able to vote based on what the Idaho statute allows us to do representing our people. To take that vote away and give it to a group of builders or developers or bankers or whoever, they have biases. So how do you take bias away? Your opinions are formed over time regarding votes and people. And it's like I've said, it's how do you unring a bell? It's out there. So I think if it boils down, everybody has an opinion. Everybody has some sort of bias, whether that's good or bad. You have to evaluate that yourself. So I'm very much opposed to taking away something that we were elected to do, and that's to represent the people. So I'm very much opposed to number 3. I'm fine with either 1 or 2, and then I like the idea that there's a numeric value that we can place, with the help of HR, that we can then evaluate each potential applicant. But the problem is we now have a 2-2 tie, it sounds like.
May I say something else?
Yes, please.
Yes. I would also like to say that I have faith in our constituents that, without looking at who's going to apply, how can we even say that there's bias? We haven't even seen what's out there. We haven't seen the applicants. I have every hope that someone that's going to satisfy us is going to step forward, and without even giving that a chance to say we have bias, I think is wrong. And I don't understand the term bias. Is not bias just voting for one person? And if we don't vote for that one person, are we biased? And I don't think that's a fair statement. So,
Well,
because, we represent our constituents, and we must act in good faith. So that's everything.
and again, without being able to put it out to a ballot, I've heard from several of our constituents, and they are very concerned about the issues that we're talking about with regard to bias. And I can read the emails, portions of them, excerpts of them that lead me to feel the way I do. And human nature is what it is. I don't care how much you say, oh, I can put all of this aside. When you have personal feelings that have been insulted, infringed on, or whatever, you cannot look at that person next to the next person and the next person and say, I'm going to give that person that has insulted me, or whatever you want to call it, the same consideration that I'm going to give the next person and the next person.
So I have to ask, are you going to read private emails between individuals?
I think I have a right to read emails that were sent to me.
Well, no, my question is, are you reading private emails between two people?
How did I come into possession of them? If I was sent emails by individuals who received emails, do they not have that right to send them to me?
No, my question is, are they private emails?
What's a private email?
Something between two people?
Are we about transparency here?
That's not the question.
Yes, it is. In this situation, if we're talking about transparency on the issue, then an email that was sent and then passed along by a constituent.
Okay, who's the email from?
One is from Joy Richards, and one is from the one that you wrote. You know very well what the other one is. It's the one you sent to Councilmember Saterfiel.
Point of order. I think we're off track here. I think we should be focusing on what our options are here.
We're not debating whether we have a bias or not. That's not what we're trying to decide right now. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what option are we going to choose to move forward. So what's your position is you don't feel that there's a...
If Councilmember Satterfield applies, because of what I feel about what I've read, the comments in this, I feel there's a definite bias and an inability for him to get a fair consideration with any other one. If Councilmember Satterfield were to look at the applicants and say, I think those are quality people and I'm going to step away, then I would participate in that process. What I have observed here over the last period of time that this has been going on, and then when you have constituents sending emails because they are so concerned about the tone of them and the like, then again, my conscience really begs me to question whether I can participate in a decision related to Councilmember Satterfield. If he were to step away from it, then I'm all for the process moving forward with the council making all the decisions. But when you read these things, anybody who would read them would say the individual who wrote these has a serious personal problem with the person that they wrote them to, and you can't just put it aside.
Councilman DePriest, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
I want to interpret a little bit what you're saying and make sure that I understand from a process perspective where this might land. So if I hear you correctly, what you're indicating is if Councilman Saterfiel continues to move forward as an applicant, when it comes time to vote on him, you would recuse yourself from that vote.
Not just him. I don't feel that if he is in the process, I feel that he basically be ignored by.
So you would recuse yourself from the entire process. That's what I'm trying to understand.
If he is involved in it, yes, because I don't feel that he, as part of the group, would receive the same equal and fair consideration as every other applicant. Okay. If he were to step away, then this bias
then
that
we don't have a quorum. We would not have a quorum for considering Councilperson Saterfield.
So I have a question for our legal counsel.
It might require me to get back to you, but go ahead.
No, I think I sent you an email asking whether if Council Member Saterfield voted to become mayor, he would actually be breaking Idaho code.
If he does that in the process once it goes out to the public.
So what happened last meeting is that he voted for himself.
He did, but it was not in a process where it was out to the public yet, number one. And number 2, it was a failed vote, so it had no effect.
So that was okay. But now that so he could have become mayor, it's possible. So he did vote for himself. But now that we go through another process, if he votes for himself, he's violated Idaho code.
Correct. That's pursuant to direction I received from the Deputy Attorney General in trying to get some guidance on all of this process piece.
Okay, I'm not going to allow Ed DePriest to read those emails. Those are private emails. That's my ruling. So let's move on.
Can I ask legal, does he have that right to do so?
Well,
To prevent me from reading emails that were sent to me?
you have a right to make whatever public comment you wish to make without jeopardizing the city in the process, is my advice. As I have told all of you at different times, I represent all of you collectively and none of you individually. And I represent the best interests of the city. And it is my job to help you protect the process. That's been the reason we've been reaching out to the Attorney General. This is unprecedented in the state. It's the reason we're trying to get direction from a state body that can help us through this process. So that's why I asked you the question of, are you saying you're going to recuse yourself, and from what? Because it's my job as legal counsel to assess now where does this leave the process? Are we at a place where you can't agree on the process and such? We're at the spot where an affidavit can go to the court. I'm trying to assess where are we in these steps of direction that we've been given for our options, because you have an obligation to do everything within your power to appoint a mayor. The statute says shall. And it is a derelict of your responsibilities to not. But you have a right to recuse yourself. You have a right to make personal assessments about the process. I just need to know what those are so I can advise you accordingly once those decisions are made.
Then I'd like to clarify again. I'm all for the process of collecting, soliciting, bringing the people applications in for the process. If Councilmember Saterfiel is in the process and remains in the process, then I think it's so tainted that I don't feel I'll be able to participate. If he decides at some point in time to step away, then I feel that the council will be able to then execute the process, I guess you could say.
So I want to understand, our legal counsel, that basically by reading these emails, it could bring liability to the city and maybe personally to Ed.
I did not say that.
Okay, so
I think people get the gist of it. So I don't need to read them. I think people get the gist of them.
all right, so we are now at a standstill on item 3.
Yes,
Yeah.
Councilwoman White has a
Oh, I'm
question.
sorry.
I have a question. So, Councilmember DePriest,
Getting the application.
based on what you're saying, what's the only acceptable outcome you see?
I think there are several potential outcomes, and I think that I just described it. Outcome number one is that Councilmember Saterfiel is involved in the process all the way through until he is either, selected for interview or what have you, and further down the line, or at some point in time, possibly, the candidates that do apply, Councilmember Saterfiel might possibly look at them and say, there's qualified people here. I'm going to step back, and if he does so, then I'm fine participating. Like I said, my only real problem here within my own conscience is I've looked at this and thought about it deeply, and it's deeply troubling to me, and it is not something I do easily. But again, we're talking about equality, fairness, the same consideration to everybody, and as long as Councilmember Saterfield is in the process, I don't feel that every candidate will receive equal and fair consideration.
So can you read the minds of other council members and their ability to vote?
Can anybody read minds? Okay, I base my decision here on I'm 64 years old. My life's experiences with interacting with people and things like that. And I find it very difficult to believe that people, just in human nature, and again my experiences, that when people have such a apparently deep-seated personal conflict with another person, that even in such close proximity of time now, that they will have that. I don't have confidence that that person has the ability to say, oh, all that stuff aside, nope, and all that stuff, nope. I'm gonna judge him as equally as I'm gonna judge everybody else in the process. That's just my.
My question is, can you read people's minds?
I can't read it. A good attorney asks questions he knows he's going to get the answer to. Okay. Anybody in here read minds?
I'm just asking
Certainly
you
not.
because you seem
And
to know what.
I'm not claiming to read anybody's.
Time out.
Can I?
Point of order.